What if I told you that my own family thought I was so ungrateful that they banned me from my grandmother's while reading? What if I told you they had no idea what was coming for them? Well, buckle up because this story will blow your mind. If you love revenge stories where the underdog gets the last laugh, smash that like button and drop a comment below telling me what you think. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more incredible revenge stories, just like this one. My name is Rachel, and I'm 29 years old. I grew up thinking family meant everything, but I learned the hard way that blood doesn't always mean loyalty. For years, I watched my relatives treat me like an outsider while they showered my cousins with love and gifts. Now, let me tell you how it all started. When I was 7 years old, my parents died in a car accident. It was the worst day of my life. 1 minute, I was playing with my dolls, and the next minute police officers were at our door telling me that Mommy and Daddy weren't coming home anymore. My grandmother, who everyone called Nana Rose, took me in. She was my dad's mother, and she had the kindest eyes I'd ever seen. But here's the thing, the rest of the family never wanted me there. My Uncle Brad and Aunt Michelle made it clear from day one that I was just a burden. They had 2 kids of their own, Kevin and Ashley, who were both older than me. Why do we have to take care of her? I heard Aunt Michelle whisper to Uncle Brad one night when they thought I was sleeping. She's not even our responsibility. But Nana Rose wouldn't hear any of it. She loved me like I was her own daughter. She would brush my hair every morning, make me chocolate chip pancakes on Sundays, and read me bedtime stories every single night. She was the only person who made me feel like I belonged somewhere. As I grew up, things got worse with my aunt and uncle. They lived in the same town, Maplewood Springs, and they would visit Nana Rose all the time. But whenever they came over, they would act like I was invisible. They brought expensive gifts for Kevin and Ashley, but never anything for me. When it was my birthday, they would suddenly have important things to do and couldn't make it. Kevin and Ashley learned to treat me the same way. They would whisper about me when they thought I couldn't hear. "She's not really family," Ashley would say. "She's just some charity case that Grandma took in." But the worst part was how they treated Nana Rose. They would only visit her when they needed money. Uncle Brad was always asking for loans to pay his bills, and Aunt Michelle would hint about how expensive Kevin's baseball equipment was, or how Ashley needed new clothes for school. Nana Rose would always give them what they asked for, but I could see the sadness in her eyes. She knew they were using her, but she loved them anyway. She wanted to believe that family meant something to them. When I turned 18, I got a job at the local diner to help pay for college. I worked nights and weekends, serving coffee and burgers to truckers and travelers. It wasn't glamorous, but it was honest work. I saved every penny I could, so I wouldn't have to ask Nana Rose for money like the others did. Uncle Brad didn't like that I was working. "You're making us look bad," he told me one day. "People are going to think we don't take care of our own family." "But I want to work," I said. "I want to be independent." He just shook his head. "You always have to be different, don't you? You always have to cause problems." That's when I realized something important. They didn't want me to succeed. They wanted me to stay dependent and grateful, like some kind of pet they could ignore when it was convenient. But Nana Rose was proud of me. She would brag to her friends about how hard I worked and how I was putting myself through college. She would tell anyone who would listen that I was going to be somebody special someday. The family didn't like that either. They started calling me ungrateful behind my back. They said I thought I was better than everyone else just because I was trying to make something of myself. Things really got bad when I started dating Tyler, a guy from my college. He was studying to be a teacher, and he was the first person outside of Nana Rose who really believed in me. Tyler would come to family dinners sometimes, and he could see how they treated me. "Why do you let them talk to you like that?" he asked me one night after a particularly awful Sunday dinner where Uncle Brad had spent the whole time criticizing everything I did. "They're family," I said. "It's complicated." But Tyler was right. They were terrible to me, and I was just taking it because I didn't know any better. The breaking point came last spring. Nana Rose had been getting sick more often, and I was the one taking care of her. I would drive her to doctor appointments, pick up her medicine, and make sure she ate proper meals. Uncle Brad and Aunt Michelle would call occasionally, but they never came to visit unless they needed something. Then one day, I got a call that would change everything. Nana Rose had collapsed at the grocery store and was being rushed to the hospital. I dropped everything and raced to be with her. When I got there, the doctors told me she had had a heart attack. It was serious, but she was going to be okay. I stayed with her all night, holding her hand and making sure she wasn't alone. The next morning, Uncle Brad and Aunt Michelle finally showed up. But instead of being worried about Nana Rose, they were angry at me. "Why didn't you call us sooner?" Aunt Michelle demanded. "I called you as soon as I got to the hospital," I said. "That's not good enough," Uncle Brad said. "We're her real family. We should have been notified first." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. They were actually mad at me for being the one who was there when she needed help. But that was nothing compared to what happened next. While Nana Rose was recovering, something occurred that shook our entire family to its core, and nothing would ever be the same again. The doctor walked into the hospital room with a serious look on his face. Nana Rose was awake now, but she looked so small and fragile in that big hospital bed. Uncle Brad and Aunt Michelle were standing on one side, while I sat in the chair next to her, still holding her hand. "Mrs. Patterson," the doctor said gently, "we need to talk about your heart condition. The tests show that you've had some damage, and we're going to need to make some changes to keep you healthy." Nana Rose squeezed my hand tighter. "What kind of changes, doctor?" "Well, you're going to need help at home. Cooking, cleaning, getting to appointments. Do you have family who can assist with that?" Before I could say anything, Uncle Brad stepped forward. "Of course she does. We'll make sure she's taken care of." But I knew that wasn't true. They hadn't helped before, and they wouldn't help now. So I spoke up. "I can move in with Nana Rose. I can take care of her." The room went quiet. Aunt Michelle's face turned red, and Uncle Brad looked like he was going to explode. "Absolutely not," Aunt Michelle said. "You're just a college student. You don't know anything about taking care of elderly people." "I've been taking care of her for months already," I said. "I'm the one who brings her to all her appointments. I'm the one who makes sure she takes her medicine." "That's different," Uncle Brad said. "This is serious now. She needs real family taking care of her." Real family. There it was again. Like I wasn't really part of this family at all. But Nana Rose surprised everyone. She looked at the doctor and said, "I want Rachel to move in with me. She's the one I trust." Uncle Brad and Aunt Michelle were furious, but they couldn't argue with Nana Rose when she was lying in a hospital bed. So I moved in with her that week. Living with Nana Rose was actually wonderful. We would watch old movies together, and she would tell me stories about when my dad was young. She taught me how to make her famous apple pie, and I helped her with her physical therapy exercises. But the rest of the family made my life miserable. They would call constantly, checking up on Nana Rose, but never asking how I was doing. They would come over unannounced and criticize everything I did. "The house is too cold," Aunt Michelle would say. "Rachel doesn't know how to take care of you properly. She's not giving you the right medicine," Uncle Brad would add. "You need professional help, not some college kid playing nurse." It hurt, but I tried to ignore them. Nana Rose was getting stronger every day, and that was all that mattered to me. Then summer came, and Kevin got engaged to his girlfriend Brittany. The whole family was excited about planning this big fancy wedding. They would have meetings at Nana Rose's house to discuss flowers and music and guest lists. I tried to help with the planning, but they made it clear I wasn't welcome. "This is family business," Aunt Michelle told me. "Why don't you go study or something?" So I would sit in my room, listening to them laugh and plan this celebration that I wasn't really part of. It was like being a ghost in my own home. The wedding was in August, and it was everything Kevin and Brittany had dreamed of. The ceremony was at St. Mary's Church, and the reception was at the fancy country club outside of town. Everyone looked beautiful, and the food was amazing. But throughout the whole day, I felt like an outsider. I sat alone during the ceremony, while the rest of the family filled up the first few rows. At the reception, I was placed at a table with some distant relatives I'd never met, while Kevin and Ashley sat at the main family table. During the speeches, Uncle Brad talked about how proud he was of his son and how wonderful it was to have the whole family together. He thanked everyone for being there, but he never mentioned me. It was like I was invisible. Later that night, I overheard Aunt Michelle talking to some of her friends. "That's Brad's niece," she said, pointing at me. "She's been living with Rose since the heart attack. We're worried she's taking advantage of an elderly woman." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Taking advantage? I was the one sacrificing my social life and my studies to make sure Nana Rose was okay. But the worst part came a few weeks later. I was helping Nana Rose organize some old photos when she started telling me about her will. She had been thinking about it a lot since her heart attack, and she wanted to make sure everything was in order. "I want you to know that I'm leaving you something special," she said. "You've been so good to me, Rachel. You're the only one who really cares about me, not just my money." I felt uncomfortable talking about this. "Nana Rose, you don't need to worry about that stuff. You're going to be around for a long time." But she shook her head. "I need to tell you this. I've been watching how my family treats you, and it breaks my heart. They don't see how wonderful you are, but I do." That conversation stayed with me for weeks. I didn't want to think about Nana Rose dying, but I knew she was trying to tell me something important. Fall came, and I started my senior year of college. I was busier than ever, but I still made sure to take care of Nana Rose. I would wake up early to make her breakfast, drive her to appointments between classes, and help her with dinner every night. The family continued to criticize everything I did. They said I was being selfish by staying in school instead of dedicating all my time to Nana Rose. They said I was using her house like a free hotel. They said I was manipulating an old woman who couldn't think clearly anymore. But Nana Rose was still sharp as a tack. She knew exactly what was going on, and she was getting tired of their behavior too. "They only call when they need money," she told me one day. "Kevin wants help with his student loans, and Ashley needs a new car. But when do they ever just call to see how I'm doing?" I didn't know what to say. She was right, but they were still her family. Then something happened that made everything crystal clear. It was a cold November morning, and I was getting ready for class when the phone rang. It was Aunt Michelle, and she was crying. "Rachel, something terrible has happened," she said. "Nana Rose had another heart attack during the night. The ambulance is taking her to the hospital right now." I dropped everything and raced to the hospital. When I got there, the doctors were already working on her. Uncle Brad and Aunt Michelle were in the waiting room, along with Kevin and Ashley. "How is she?" I asked. "It's bad," Uncle Brad said. "They don't know if she's going to make it." We waited for hours. Finally, the doctor came out with news that would change everything forever. "I'm sorry," he said quietly. "We did everything we could, but Mrs. Patterson passed away about 10 minutes ago." The room erupted in sobs. I felt like the world had stopped spinning. My Nana Rose, the only person who truly loved me, was gone. But through my grief, I noticed something strange. Uncle Brad and Aunt Michelle were crying, but they were also whispering to each other about practical matters. I heard words like funeral arrangements and will and lawyer. Even in their grief, they were already thinking about money. The funeral was 3 days later. The whole town came to pay their respects because Nana Rose had been such a beloved member of the community. I gave a speech about how she had saved my life and been the best grandmother anyone could ask for. But afterward, when we were all gathered at her house, Uncle Brad made an announcement that hit me like a punch to the stomach. "The lawyer called this morning," he said. "The will reading is scheduled for next Friday at 2 p.m. He asked me to let everyone know who needs to be there." He looked around the room at Aunt Michelle, Kevin, and Ashley. Then his eyes landed on me, and his expression changed. Rachel, he said coldly, the lawyer said this meeting is for immediate family only. Since you're not technically a blood relative, you won't be needed. I stared at him in shock. What do you mean I'm not needed? Nana Rose was my grandmother too. She was your guardian, Aunt Michelle corrected, but she wasn't your real grandmother. The will reading is for her actual children and grandchildren. But she raised me, I said, my voice breaking. She loved me like her own granddaughter. Look, Rachel, Uncle Brad said, we know you're upset, but you need to understand your place in this family. You've been ungrateful for years, always acting like you're better than the rest of us. Now it's time for the real family to handle the important business. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. After everything I had done for Nana Rose, after all the years of taking care of her and loving her, they were excluding me from her final wishes. You can't do this, I said. I have a right to be there. Actually, you don't, Uncle Brad said with a cruel smile. The lawyer was very clear about who was invited, and your name wasn't on the list. I looked around the room at these people who I had called family my entire life. Kevin and Ashley wouldn't even look at me. Aunt Michelle was nodding along with everything her husband said. Not one of them was willing to stand up for me. That night, I sat alone in Nana Rose's house, surrounded by all the memories we had made together. I felt more alone than I had ever felt in my life. The only person who had ever really loved me was gone, and now the rest of the family was shutting me out completely. But as I sat there crying, I remembered something Nana Rose had told me just a few weeks before she died. She had been acting secretive about something, making phone calls when she thought I wasn't listening. And now I was starting to wonder if those calls had something to do with her will. Little did I know that in exactly 1 week, my entire world was about to be turned upside down in a way that none of us could have imagined. The week leading up to the will reading was the longest week of my life. I stayed in Nana Rose's house, packing up my things and trying to figure out what I was going to do next. Uncle Brad had made it clear that I needed to be out by the end of the month. The house will probably be sold, he told me over the phone. We need to settle the estate, and having you there just complicates things. I felt like I was losing everything all over again. First my parents, then Nana Rose, and now the only home I had known for over 20 years. Tyler came over every day to help me pack. He was furious about how the family was treating me. This is insane, he said as we folded Nana Rose's clothes. You were more of a daughter to her than they were children. You should be at that will reading. Maybe they're right, I said sadly. Maybe I really am just an outsider who was lucky enough to be taken in. Don't you dare say that, Tyler said firmly. Your grandmother loved you more than anyone. I saw it every time she looked at you. But even Tyler's support couldn't fill the hole in my heart. I felt abandoned and forgotten, like I had never really mattered to anyone except Nana Rose. On Thursday night, the day before the will reading, I was sitting in the living room looking through old photo albums when the doorbell rang. I opened it to find a man in a dark suit holding a briefcase. Are you Rachel Martinez? He asked. Yes, I said nervously. My name is David Hoffman. I'm Mrs. Patterson's attorney. May I come in? I was confused. Why would Nana Rose's lawyer be here to see me? I let him in and offered him some coffee. I'm sorry for your loss, he said kindly. Mrs. Patterson spoke about you often. She was very proud of you. Thank you, I said, still confused about why he was there. I know you're not planning to attend tomorrow's will reading, he said. I wasn't invited, I said, feeling embarrassed. Uncle Brad said it was for immediate family only. Mr. Hoffman looked surprised. I'm sorry, but there seems to be some confusion. You are absolutely supposed to be there. In fact, your presence is essential. My heart started beating faster. What do you mean? I can't discuss the details of the will before tomorrow's reading, he said. But I can tell you that Mrs. Patterson left very specific instructions about who should be present. Your name is at the top of that list. I stared at him in shock. But Uncle Brad said, Mr. Patterson doesn't get to decide who attends the will reading. Mr. Hoffman said firmly. I do, and I'm telling you that you need to be there tomorrow at 2 p.m. After he left, I sat there trying to process what had just happened. Nana Rose had specifically requested that I be at the will reading, but Uncle Brad had lied to me about it. He had tried to exclude me from something that was rightfully mine to attend. I called Tyler and told him what had happened. He was so angry he could barely speak. They deliberately lied to you, he said. They tried to keep you away from your own grandmother's will reading. What kind of people do that? That night, I barely slept. I kept thinking about what Mr. Hoffman had said. Why was my presence essential? What had Nana Rose put in her will that she needed me to be there for? Friday morning came, and I got dressed in my best black dress. I was nervous and scared, but I was also determined. Nana Rose had wanted me there, and I wasn't going to let her down. I arrived at the law office at exactly 2 p.m. The secretary showed me to a conference room where Uncle Brad, Aunt Michelle, Kevin, and Ashley were already sitting around a large table. When they saw me walk in, their faces went white. "What is she doing here?" Aunt Michelle asked. "I was invited," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "That's impossible," Uncle Brad said. The lawyer specifically said immediate family only. Just then, Mr. Hoffman walked in with a thick folder. He looked around the room and smiled. "Good, everyone is here," he said. "Let's begin." "Excuse me," Uncle Brad interrupted. "There's been a mistake. Rachel shouldn't be here." Mr. Hoffman looked confused. "I'm sorry, but Miss Martinez is specifically named in the will. She absolutely should be here." "But she's not really family," Aunt Michelle said. "She's just someone my mother-in-law took in out of charity." I felt my face burn with embarrassment, but Mr. Hoffman's expression grew stern. "Mrs. Patterson made it very clear to me that Rachel was her granddaughter in every way that mattered," he said firmly. "And according to the legal documents I'm about to read, she is indeed family." He opened the folder and pulled out several papers. "Before we begin with the will, I have some other documents that Mrs. Patterson asked me to share with you." He handed me a piece of paper. "Rachel, this is for you." I looked down at the paper, and my hands started shaking. It was an adoption certificate, dated just 2 months ago. Nana Rose had legally adopted me as her daughter. "I don't understand," I whispered. "Mrs. Patterson came to me in September," Mr. Hoffman explained. "She said she wanted to make sure there could never be any question about your place in this family. She legally adopted you, making you her daughter and the legal sister to Rachel's father." The room was dead silent. Uncle Brad's mouth was hanging open, and Aunt Michelle looked like she was going to faint. "This is impossible," Uncle Brad said. "She never told us about this." "She didn't need your permission," Mr. Hoffman said. "Rachel is an adult, and Mrs. Patterson was of sound mind when she made this decision." I was crying now, but they were happy tears. Even after death, Nana Rose was still protecting me and making sure I belonged. "Now," Mr. Hoffman continued, "let's proceed with the will reading." He cleared his throat and began to read. "I, Rose Patterson, being of sound mind and body, do hereby leave my estate as follows." He read through several small gifts first. Kevin got her antique watch collection, worth about $5,000. Ashley got her jewelry collection, worth about $8,000. Uncle Brad got her car, a nice sedan that was only 2 years old. "To my son, Bradley Patterson," Mr. Hoffman continued reading, "I leave the sum of $25,000, with the hope that he will use it wisely and remember the values I tried to teach him." Uncle Brad smiled for the first time since I'd walked in. $25,000 was a lot of money. "To my daughter-in-law, Michelle Patterson, I leave the sum of $15,000, with gratitude for the years she has been part of our family." Aunt Michelle looked pleased. She was probably already planning how to spend the money. "And now," Mr. Hoffman said, "we come to the remainder of the estate." Everyone leaned forward. Nana Rose had lived simply, But everyone knew she had been careful with her money over the years. The house alone was worth at least $300,000, and she had always been smart about her investments. To my beloved daughter, Rachel Martinez, formerly Rachel Martinez Patterson, I leave the remainder of my estate, including my house at 1247 Maple Street, all remaining bank accounts, all investment accounts, and all other property not specifically mentioned above. The room erupted in shocked voices, but Mr. Hoffman held up his hand for silence. The total value of this bequest, he continued, is approximately $850,000. I couldn't breathe. $850,000. I had gone from being excluded from the will reading to inheriting almost $1 million. Uncle Brad jumped to his feet. This is outrageous. She can't leave everything to her. She's not even really family. Actually, Mr. Hoffman said calmly, she is family, and Mrs. Patterson was very clear about her wishes. We're going to contest this, Aunt Michelle said, her voice shaking with anger. This will never hold up in court. You're welcome to try, Mr. Hoffman said, but I should warn you that Mrs. Patterson anticipated this possibility. She left very detailed instructions about why she made these decisions. He pulled out another piece of paper. She wrote a letter explaining her reasoning. Would you like me to read it? Yes, I whispered. Mr. Hoffman cleared his throat and began to read in Nana Rose's voice, as if she were speaking from beyond the grave. To my family, if you are hearing this letter, it means you are probably upset about my will. I want you to know that I made these decisions with a clear mind and a full heart. For 22 years, I watched how you treated Rachel. I saw how you excluded her from family gatherings, how you whispered about her behind her back, and how you made her feel like she didn't belong. I saw how you only visited me when you needed money, but Rachel was there every single day, taking care of me and loving me unconditionally. She gave up her social life to make sure I took my medicine. She drove me to every doctor's appointment. She held my hand when I was scared, and she made me laugh when I was sad. She is the daughter I always wanted and the granddaughter who truly loved me. The money I'm leaving her is not just an inheritance. It's a thank you for being the family that the rest of you never were. The room was so quiet you could hear a pin drop. Kevin and Ashley were staring at the table, and Uncle Brad looked like he was going to explode. But Mr. Hoffman wasn't finished. He pulled out one more document, and when he spoke, his voice was deadly serious. There's one more thing, he said. Mrs. Patterson also left instructions about what should happen if anyone tries to contest this will or make Rachel's life difficult. Everyone looked up at him nervously. If any legal action is taken against this will, or if Rachel is harassed or threatened in any way, there is a provision that will donate the entire estate to charity. No one will get anything. Uncle Brad's face turned purple. You can't be serious. I'm completely serious, Mr. Hoffman said. Mrs. Patterson thought of everything. She wanted to make sure Rachel would be protected even after she was gone. As we walked out of the law office, I felt like I was in a dream. In 1 hour, my entire life had changed. I went from being the unwanted outsider to being legally part of the family and inheriting more money than I had ever imagined. But as I reached my car, I realized that Uncle Brad and Aunt Michelle were following me. Their faces were filled with rage, and I could tell they weren't going to let this go without a fight. You think you've won, Uncle Brad said in a low, dangerous voice. But this isn't over. We know what you really are, and we're going to make sure everyone else knows too. What happened next would test everything I thought I knew about family, loyalty, and revenge. Uncle Brad stepped closer to me in the parking lot, his face twisted with anger. You manipulated a sick old woman, he hissed. You turned her against her own family. That's not true, I said, backing toward my car. I loved her and she loved me. Love. Aunt Michelle laughed bitterly. You saw dollar signs, that's what you saw. You probably poisoned her mind against us while you were living in her house. Kevin and Ashley stood behind their parents, looking uncomfortable, but not saying anything to defend me. Even now, after everything we'd just heard, they were still choosing their parents' side over the truth. "You're going to regret this," Uncle Brad said. "We're going to tell everyone in this town what kind of person you really are." I got in my car and drove away, my hands shaking on the steering wheel. I couldn't believe that even after hearing Nana Rose's letter, they were still trying to make me feel like the bad guy. When I got home, my home now, I realized Tyler was waiting for me on the front porch. I ran into his arms and told him everything that had happened. "I can't believe it," he said, holding me tight. "Nana Rose adopted you and left you almost $1 million. "It doesn't feel real," I said. "But Tyler, they're so angry. Uncle Brad threatened me in the parking lot." "Let them be angry," Tyler said. "They had 22 years to treat you like family, and they chose not to. Now they have to live with the consequences." That weekend, I tried to process everything that had happened. I called my college financial aid office and paid off my student loans. I called my boss at the diner and gave my notice. For the first time in my life, I didn't have to worry about money. But by Monday, I realized that Uncle Brad hadn't been making empty threats. The phone started ringing early in the morning, and it didn't stop. "Is it true that you stole your grandmother's inheritance?" asked Mrs. Thompson from down the street. "I heard you tricked an old woman into changing her will," said my former supervisor at the diner. "How could you do that to your own family?" asked people I barely knew. Uncle Brad and Aunt Michelle had been busy over the weekend, spreading lies about me all over town. They were telling everyone that I had manipulated Nana Rose when she was weak and confused. They said I had isolated her from her real family and convinced her to leave me everything. The rumors got worse and worse. Some people were saying that I had stolen money from Nana Rose while she was alive. Others were saying that I had forged the adoption papers. A few people even suggested that I had done something to cause her heart attack. I stopped going to the grocery store because people would stare at me and whisper. I stopped going to church because I could feel everyone's eyes on me during the service. Even some of my college friends started acting strange around me. "Is it true what people are saying?" asked my classmate Jennifer after our psychology class. "What are people saying?" I asked, even though I already knew. "That you convinced your grandmother to cut off her real family so you could inherit everything." I tried to explain what had really happened, but I could see that Jennifer didn't believe me. The lies were spreading faster than I could correct them. Tyler was furious. "They're destroying your reputation," he said. "You should sue them for defamation." "With what proof?" I asked. "It's my word against theirs, and they're the ones everyone has known for years." But the worst part was how the lies were affecting my memories of Nana Rose. People were saying such terrible things about her, claiming she had been mentally incompetent and easily manipulated. It broke my heart to hear the woman I loved being talked about that way. 2 weeks after the will reading, I was at the post office when I overheard a conversation that made my blood boil. "I feel so sorry for Brad and Michelle," said a woman I recognized from church. "They took care of that old woman for years, and then some stranger comes in and steals everything." "I heard the girl was living there rent-free," said another woman. "She probably saw an opportunity and took advantage of it." "Those poor children," said the first woman. "Kevin and Ashley must be devastated. They were so close to their grandmother." I wanted to scream. Kevin and Ashley had barely visited Nana Rose, and when they did, it was only to ask for money. But somehow the story had been twisted to make them look like devoted grandchildren who had been cheated out of their inheritance. That night, I sat in Nana Rose's kitchen, my kitchen now, and cried. I had the money and the house, but I had lost something more important: my reputation and my place in the community. Tyler found me there an hour later, surrounded by tissues and feeling sorry for myself. "I can't live like this," I told him. "Everyone thinks I'm some kind of criminal. Maybe I should just give them the money and leave town." "Absolutely not," Tyler said firmly. "You're not running away, and you're not giving up what's rightfully yours." "But what choice do I have?" I asked. "They've turned everyone against me." Tyler was quiet for a moment, and then he got that look in his eyes that meant he was forming a plan. "You know what?" he said. "Maybe it's time to stop playing defense and start playing offense." "What do you mean?" "I mean, maybe it's time to fight back. You've been letting them control the narrative this whole time, but you have something they don't have." "What's that?" "The truth. And more importantly, you have the means to make sure everyone knows the truth." I looked at him confused. "How?" Tyler smiled. "Rachel, you just inherited $850,000. That's not just money, that's power. And it's time you learned how to use it." Over the next few days, Tyler helped me come up with a plan. We started researching Uncle Brad and Aunt Michelle's finances, and what we found was very interesting. It turned out that Uncle Brad had been in financial trouble for years. He had borrowed money from 3 different banks, and he was behind on payments for his house and his car. He had also borrowed money from Nana, Rose, multiple times over the past few years, much more than I had realized. Aunt Michelle wasn't much better. She had maxed out several credit cards and had been borrowing money from her sister to pay for Ashley's college tuition. "No wonder they're so upset about the will," Tyler said. "They were probably counting on that inheritance to solve all their financial problems." But the most interesting thing we discovered was that Uncle Brad had been telling people he was Nana Rose's power of attorney and had been handling her finances. That wasn't true. Nana Rose had always handled her own money, but several people in town believed it. "That's fraud," Tyler said. "He's been lying about having legal authority over her affairs." "But how does that help us?" I asked, because if he's been lying about that, what else has he been lying about? Tyler's plan was brilliant. Instead of trying to defend myself against their lies, we were going to go on the offensive. We were going to expose the truth about Uncle Brad and Aunt Michelle's financial problems and their real relationship with Nana Rose. But first, we needed evidence. And to get evidence, we were going to need help from someone who had access to information that we didn't. That's when Tyler suggested we hire a private investigator. "A private investigator?" I asked. "Isn't that a bit extreme?" "Rachel, they're trying to destroy your life," Tyler said. "They've turned half the town against you with their lies. If you want to clear your name and honor Nana Rose's memory, you need to fight back with everything you've got." He was right. I was tired of being passive. I was tired of letting them control the story. It was time to take charge of my own life and show everyone who Brad and Michelle really were. The next morning, I called a private investigation firm in the next town over. I explained the situation and asked if they could help me gather information about my uncle and aunt's finances and their relationship with Nana Rose. "We can definitely help you," said the investigator, a woman named Patricia Wells. "But I have to warn you, investigations like this can uncover things that you might not want to know." "I need to know the truth," I said, "whatever it is." "All right then," Patricia said. "Give me 2 weeks, and I'll have a complete report for you." While we waited for the investigation results, Tyler and I started phase 2 of our plan. We began reaching out to people who had known Nana Rose well, her doctor, her neighbors, the people at her church, and asking them to share their memories of her. What we learned was heartbreaking, but not surprising. Dr. Martinez, her longtime physician, told us that Nana Rose had been completely mentally sharp right up until the day she died. "She was one of the most intelligent patients I've ever had," he said. "She asked detailed questions about her medications and her treatment options. There was never any sign of confusion or mental decline. Mrs. Garcia, who lived next door, told us that she had seen how much I cared for Nana Rose. That girl was there every single day," she said. "Rain or shine, she was taking care of Rose. I barely ever saw the rest of the family, except when they needed something." Father Miguel from St. Joseph's Church had similar stories. "Rose talked about Rachel all the time," he said. "She was so proud of her. She used to say that Rachel was the daughter she never had." But the most important conversation was with Nana Rose's longtime friend, Mrs. Chin, who had known her for over 30 years. Rose was furious about how Brad and Michelle treated Rachel, Mrs. Chin told us. She used to call me and vent about it. She said they were cruel to that girl, and she was tired of watching it happen. Did she ever talk about changing her will? I asked. Oh, yes, Mrs. Chin said. She told me months ago that she was going to make sure Rachel was taken care of. She said Brad and Michelle had shown their true colors, and she wasn't going to reward them for treating Rachel badly. This was exactly the kind of evidence we needed. Nana Rose had been talking about her decisions for months before she died, and it had nothing to do with me manipulating her. It was about her finally standing up for me after years of watching her family treat me poorly. 2 weeks later, Patricia Wells called with the results of her investigation. What she had found was going to change everything. You need to come to my office, she said. What I have to show you is going to shock you. When Tyler and I arrived at her office, Patricia laid out a thick folder of documents on her desk. I've been doing this for 15 years, she said, and I've never seen anything quite like this. She opened the folder and pulled out a stack of papers. Let's start with your uncle's finances. He owes $47,000 in credit card debt. He's 3 months behind on his mortgage, and he has 2 personal loans that are in default. We knew he was having money problems, I said. Yes, but that's not the interesting part, Patricia said. The interesting part is how he's been trying to solve those problems. She pulled out another set of documents. For the past 2 years, your uncle has been forging your grandmother's signature on checks. I stared at the papers in shock. What do you mean? I mean he's been stealing money from her, Patricia said. Small amounts at first, $200 here, $500 there. But in the last 6 months, the amounts got bigger. He stole $3,000 from her account just 2 weeks before she died. Tyler grabbed my hand. That's why they're so angry about the will. They weren't just counting on the inheritance. They were already stealing from her. But there's more, Patricia said. I also found evidence that your Aunt Michelle has been using your grandmother's credit cards to pay for personal expenses. Clothes, dinners, even a vacation to Florida last year. I felt sick. While I was taking care of Nana Rose, making sure she had everything she needed, her own son and daughter-in-law were stealing from her. How much did they steal total? I asked. Patricia flipped through the documents. Based on what I can prove, at least $18,000 over the past 2 years. Can we prove this? Tyler asked. Absolutely, Patricia said. I have copies of all the forged checks, credit card statements, and bank records. This is ironclad evidence of financial elder abuse. I sat there, trying to process what I was hearing. Uncle Brad and Aunt Michelle weren't just greedy. They were criminals who had been stealing from an elderly woman. There's one more thing, Patricia said, and this is the part that's going to really shock you. She pulled out a final document. 3 months ago, your uncle applied for a loan using your grandmother's house as collateral. He forged her signature on the application. He tried to mortgage her house? I asked. Not just mortgage it, Patricia said. He was trying to take out a second mortgage for $75,000. The only reason it didn't go through was because the bank called your grandmother to verify the application, and she told them she had never signed any such document. So he was trying to steal her house too, Tyler said. Essentially, yes, Patricia said. If that loan had gone through, your grandmother would have been responsible for a debt she didn't know about, secured by the house she lived in. I felt like I was going to be sick. These people had been systematically stealing from Nana Rose while pretending to be her loving family, and then they had the nerve to call me ungrateful and spread lies about me around town. What can we do with this information? I asked. Patricia smiled. Well, financial elder abuse is a felony. You could press charges if you wanted to. But more importantly, Tyler added, we can use this to clear your name and show everyone who the real criminals are. As we left Patricia's office, I felt a mix of emotions. I was devastated to learn how badly Nana Rose had been treated by her own family. But I was also relieved to finally have proof of what had really been happening. So what's the plan? I asked Tyler as we drove home. We're going to give them one chance to make this right, he said. And if they don't take it, we're going to expose everything. That night, I sat down and wrote a letter to Uncle Brad and Aunt Michelle. In it, I laid out everything we had discovered about their financial crimes. I told them that I had evidence of the forged checks, the credit card fraud, and attempted mortgage fraud. Then I gave them a choice. They could publicly apologize for the lies they had been spreading about me, or I would turn all the evidence over to the police and the district attorney. You have 48 hours to decide, I wrote at the end of the letter. After that, I'm going to make sure everyone in this town knows exactly what you did to Nana Rose. I mailed the letter on Friday morning, and by Monday afternoon I had my answer. But their response was not what I expected, and it set in motion a chain of events that would change everything once again. Monday afternoon, I was sitting in the living room grading some papers for my final college assignments when the doorbell rang. When I opened it, I found Uncle Brad standing on my porch, but he wasn't alone. Behind him were Kevin, Ashley, and 3 people I didn't recognize. "We need to talk," Uncle Brad said, pushing past me into the house. "Excuse me," I said, "but you can't just walk into my house uninvited." "Your house," one of the strangers said. He was a tall man in an expensive suit. "That's exactly what we're here to discuss." Uncle Brad turned to face me, and I could see that he was angrier than I had ever seen him before. "You think you're so smart," he said, "sending me that letter with your little threats. Well, guess what? We've been doing some investigating of our own." The man in the suit stepped forward. "Miss Martinez, my name is Robert Kane. I'm an attorney representing the Patterson family. We're here to inform you that we're contesting the will." "You can't do that," I said. "Mr. Hoffman told you what would happen if you tried to contest it." "Actually, we can," Kane said smugly, "because we have new evidence that proves the will is invalid." My heart started beating faster. What kind of evidence? Uncle Brad smiled cruelly. "Tell her, Robert." Kane opened his briefcase and pulled out a folder. "We have evidence that you used undue influence to manipulate Mrs. Patterson into changing her will. We also have evidence that you isolated her from her family and convinced her to make decisions she wouldn't have made in her right mind." "That's not true," I said. "Isn't it?" Kane asked. "You moved into her house after her heart attack. You controlled who could visit her and when. You monitored her phone calls and her mail. You had complete access to her finances and her personal affairs." "I was taking care of her," I said. "She asked me to move in." "According to our witnesses," Kane continued, "you told several people that Mrs. Patterson was becoming confused and forgetful. You said she was having trouble managing her affairs and needed help making decisions." I stared at him in shock. "I never said anything like that." "We have 3 witnesses who will testify that you did," Kane said, "including a bank teller who says you told her that Mrs. Patterson was developing memory problems and that you needed to help her with her banking." This was insane. I had never said anything like that to anyone. But then I realized what was happening. They were lying. They were creating fake witnesses to support their case. "You're making this up," I said. "We also have evidence," Kane continued, "that you forged Mrs. Patterson's signature on the adoption papers." "What?" I gasped. "The handwriting expert we hired says the signature on the adoption documents doesn't match Mrs. Patterson's normal signature. It appears to have been traced or copied." I felt like the room was spinning. This couldn't be happening. The adoption was real. Mr. Hoffman had handled it himself. "You can't prove that," I said weakly. "Actually, we can," Kane said, "and we're prepared to take this to court. But we're also prepared to offer you a deal." Uncle Brad stepped forward again. "Here's what's going to happen. You're going to sign a document giving up all claim to the inheritance. In exchange, we won't press charges for forgery and fraud. But if you refuse," Kane added, "we'll not only contest the will, but we'll also have you arrested for elder abuse and fraud." You'll lose everything, and you'll probably go to prison. I looked around the room at all these people who were trying to destroy my life. Kevin and Ashley were standing by the window, still not saying anything to defend me. The other strangers were probably fake witnesses they had paid to lie for them. I need to call my lawyer, I said. You don't have a lawyer, Uncle Brad said. You're just a college student who got lucky. But your luck has run out. I'm not signing anything, I said. I want you all to leave my house right now. Kane smiled coldly. Very well. You have 24 hours to reconsider. After that, we file the lawsuit and the criminal charges. After they left, I called Tyler in tears. Then I called Mr. Hoffman's office, but his secretary said he was out of town at a conference and wouldn't be back until Thursday. What am I going to do? I asked Tyler when he came over. They have fake witnesses and fake evidence. How can I fight that? We fight back with the truth, Tyler said, and we fight back with the evidence Patricia found. But what if that's not enough? What if they really can prove the adoption papers were forged? Tyler held my hands and looked me in the eyes. Rachel, do you trust Nana Rose? Of course I do. Then trust that she knew what she was doing. She wouldn't have left you everything if she wasn't absolutely sure it was legal and right. That night, I barely slept. I kept thinking about what Kane had said about the adoption papers being forged. But I knew that wasn't true. I had been there when Nana Rose signed them. Mr. Hoffman had witnessed it himself. The next morning, I called Patricia Wells and told her what had happened. They're desperate, she said. When people are caught red-handed, they often try to turn the tables and blame the victim. But what if their fake evidence convinces a judge? I asked. That's why we need to act fast, Patricia said. I think it's time to go public with what we found. What do you mean? I mean it's time to stop playing defense and start playing offense. We need to expose them before they can destroy you. Patricia's plan was bold. Instead of waiting for them to file their lawsuit, we were going to call a press conference and release all the evidence of their financial crimes. We were going to tell the whole story, how they had been stealing from Nana Rose, how they had excluded me from family events, and how they were now trying to steal my inheritance with fake evidence. But won't that make them angrier? I asked. Probably, Patricia said, but it will also put them on the defensive. Right now, they're controlling the narrative. It's time for you to take control. Tyler thought it was a great idea. You've been letting them bully you your whole life, he said. It's time to stand up for yourself and for Nana Rose. We scheduled the press conference for Thursday afternoon at the community center. I called the local newspaper, the radio station, and the TV news. I told them I had evidence of financial elder abuse and fraud involving a prominent local family. Word got around quickly. By Thursday morning, it seemed like the whole town was talking about the press conference. Some people were curious, some were skeptical, and some were angry that I was attacking the Patterson family. Uncle Brad called me that morning, furious. What do you think you're doing? He yelled into the phone. I'm telling the truth, I said calmly. If you go through with this, you'll regret it for the rest of your life, he threatened. Is that a threat? I asked. It's a promise, he said and hung up. Thursday afternoon came, and I was terrified. I had never spoken in public before, and I was about to accuse my own family of serious crimes in front of the entire town. The community center was packed. I saw familiar faces from church, from the diner, from around town. Uncle Brad and Aunt Michelle were there with their lawyer, sitting in the front row and glaring at me. Tyler squeezed my hand as I walked up to the podium. You've got this, he whispered. I took a deep breath and began to speak. Thank you all for coming, I said. My name is Rachel Martinez, and I'm here to tell you the truth about what really happened with my grandmother, Rose Patterson. I told them about how Nana Rose had taken me in after my parents died. I told them about how the family had treated me over the years, making me feel like an outsider in my own home. I told them about how I had taken care of Nana Rose during her final months, while her own son and daughter-in-law barely visited. Then I told them about the will reading and how Uncle Brad had tried to exclude me from it. I explained about the adoption papers and how Nana Rose had legally made me her daughter. But what I discovered after the will reading, I said, was much worse than I ever could have imagined. I pulled out Patricia's folder and began reading from the evidence. I told them about the forged checks, the credit card fraud, and the attempted mortgage fraud. I showed them copies of the documents that proved Uncle Brad and Aunt Michelle had been stealing from Nana Rose for years. The room was completely silent. People were staring at the documents in shock. While I was taking care of my grandmother, I said, making sure she took her medicine and got to her doctor appointments, her own son was stealing money from her bank account. While I was holding her hand during her heart attacks, her daughter-in-law was using her credit cards to go shopping. I looked directly at Uncle Brad and Aunt Michelle. They stole at least $18,000 from an elderly woman who trusted them. And now, instead of apologizing or making amends, they're trying to steal the rest of her estate by claiming that I manipulated her. I pulled out the letter that Nana Rose had left to be read at the will reading. But don't take my word for it, I said. Take my grandmother's word. I read the entire letter aloud, including the parts about how the family had treated me and why she had decided to leave me her estate. By the time I finished reading, there were tears in many people's eyes. My grandmother didn't leave me her money because I tricked her, I said. She left it to me because I loved her when no one else did. She left it to me because I was there when she needed me. And she left it to me because she wanted to make sure I would be okay after she was gone. I paused and looked around the room. I know some of you have heard rumors about me. I know some of you think I'm a gold digger who took advantage of an old woman. But I want you to look at the evidence and decide for yourselves who the real criminals are. When I finished speaking, the room erupted in questions from reporters and murmurs from the crowd. But I had said everything I needed to say. As I walked off the stage, I saw Uncle Brad and Aunt Michelle rushing toward the exit with their lawyer. They looked panicked and defeated. But then I noticed something else. Kevin was walking toward me, and for the first time in years he looked ashamed. "Rachel," he said quietly, "can I talk to you?" I nodded, and we walked to a quiet corner of the room. "I'm sorry," he said, and I could see that he meant it. I knew some of what my parents were doing, but I didn't know it was this bad. "You knew they were stealing from Nana Rose?" I asked. He nodded. I knew about some of the checks. Dad said Grandma had given him permission to help with her bills. I should have questioned it more. "Why didn't you?" I asked. Kevin was quiet for a moment. Because it was easier not to ask questions. Because I was getting money for college and I didn't want it to stop. Because I was selfish and stupid. At least he was being honest. "What happens now?" he asked. "Now your parents face the consequences of what they did," I said. "And hopefully, Nana Rose can finally rest in peace, knowing that the truth came out." Kevin nodded and walked away. Ashley never came over to talk to me, but I saw her watching from across the room. She looked confused and hurt, like she was finally realizing what kind of people her parents really were. The next few days were a whirlwind. The story was front-page news in the local paper, and it was the lead story on the evening news. The district attorney's office announced that they were opening an investigation into the elder abuse allegations. Uncle Brad and Aunt Michelle's lawyer dropped their case and stopped returning their phone calls. Without fake witnesses and forged evidence, they had no way to contest the will. But the most satisfying moment came a week later, when I got a call from Mr. Hoffman. "I have some interesting news," he said. "Bradley and Michelle Patterson have just signed a confession admitting to financial elder abuse. They're also agreeing to pay restitution for the money they stole." "What does that mean?" I asked. "It means they're going to pay back every penny they stole from your grandmother," he said, "plus interest and penalties. It also means they're pleading guilty to criminal charges and will probably serve some jail time." I sat down heavily in Nana Rose's favorite chair. It was over. After months of lies and threats and legal battles, it was finally over. "There's one more thing," Mr. Hoffman said. "They also signed a document acknowledging that you are Rose Patterson's legal daughter and that the will is completely valid. They're giving up any claim to contest it." That evening, Tyler and I sat on the front porch of my house, truly my house now, and watched the sunset. The whole ordeal had been exhausting and painful, but it had also taught me something important about standing up for myself and fighting for what's right. "So what are you going to do now?" Tyler asked. "You've got almost $1 million and your whole life ahead of you." I thought about it for a moment. "First, I'm going to finish college. Then I think I want to use some of the money to help other people who are being abused or taken advantage of. Like a foundation or something." "Maybe," I said. "I keep thinking about how alone I felt when all this started. Maybe I can help other people who are going through similar situations." Tyler smiled. "I think Nana Rose would love that." He was right. Nana Rose had spent her whole life taking care of people who needed help. Using her money to continue that work would be the perfect way to honor her memory. 3 months later, Uncle Brad and Aunt Michelle were sentenced to 18 months in prison for financial elder abuse. They were also ordered to pay back $23,000 in restitution, including interest and penalties. Kevin came to see me before they went to prison. He apologized again and told me that he was transferring to a different college to get away from the whole situation. "I want to start over," he said. "I want to be a better person than my parents were." I hoped he meant it. Ashley never apologized, but she also never bothered me again. I heard through the grapevine that she was having a hard time dealing with the shame of having criminal parents. As for me, I graduated from college with honors and started the Rose Patterson Foundation for Elder Protection. We help elderly people who are being abused or exploited by their families, and we provide legal assistance to victims of financial elder abuse. Tyler and I got married 2 years later, and we're still living in Nana Rose's house. Every morning when I wake up, I look at the framed photo of her on my nightstand and say thank you. Thank you for loving me when no one else would. Thank you for standing up for me even after you were gone. And thank you for teaching me that family isn't about blood. It's about love, loyalty, and being there for each other when it matters most. The family that excluded me from the will reading for being ungrateful learned the hard way that kindness and love are more powerful than greed and cruelty. And I learned that sometimes the best revenge is simply living well and using your blessings to help others. Nana Rose would be proud of the woman I've become, and that's all that really matters to me.